Early last year, the FDA made a surprising announcement. It cut the recommended dose of the nation's most popular sleep drug, Ambien, by half, but only for women. Lesley Stahl learned how much different men and women are when it comes to medicine. Here's a preview of her report for Sunday night's 60 Minutes.
We have generated just a ton of information that suggests that there's sex differences everywhere.
Larry Cahill, a neuroscientist at the University of California, Irvine, used to share his field's assumption that males and females outside the reproductive system were fundamentally the same. But he's changed his outlook 180 degrees. Ambien, he says, is a case in point.
Ambien, prescribed 40 million times just last year. Approved 20 years ago. We're only now finding out that women have been prescribed a dose that's twice as high as they need.
That is a textbook example of what's wrong. How did it happen that for 20-some years, women, millions of them, were essentially overdosing on Ambien?
The FDA says it made the change after new driving simulation studies established what amount of Ambien or Zolpidem in the blood the next morning could be dangerous for driving. Dr. Sandra Queter, deputy director of the FDA's Office of New Drugs, says only then did they realize women could be taking too much, since women metabolize the drug differently than men.
So if I took Zolpidem and my brother took the same dose, probably the maximum level of drug in my blood would be 45% higher than his maximum blood level.
Now that sounds substantial.
It is substantial.
If science got Ambien so wrong, does that tell you that we really need to go back and review?
Yes.
What, everything?
Pretty much everything, yeah. Is once you see this difference, and that difference, and that difference, and that difference, and that difference, and you see this thing's everywhere, you go, wait a minute. So the assumption we're making that it really doesn't matter, sex, is not a valid assumption. It may not matter. It may matter hugely. It may flip your results on their head, and you don't know. So what happens is you start to realize, wow, the status quo is not okay. The way we're doing business has to change.
Lesley Stahl is with us. Good morning.
Morning, Charlie.
So this is interesting. What surprised you most of all the things that you found out?
I guess what the big thing is how pervasive the differences between men and women are. It's not just that we metabolize medicine differently. Our lungs are different. Our cells are different. Our skin is different. We used to think it was just, you know, the gynecology areas, the bikini medicine, as they called it. But now we're learning that we are pervasively different at every level.
Why didn't we know this before?
You know, that's a great question, because research, and it still is this way, research is done originally on animals, and they use only male animals to this day. Now, they used to only have male in the human studies, but now they have females in the human studies. However, instead of seeing how women react versus how men react in the study, they put them all together and take the average.
You know, Lesley, I remember when Dr. Bernadine Healy took over the NIH, and she said, what, all our taxpayer money, we're only doing tests on males? This is in the 1990s that they first started including women.
Can you believe we haven't figured out that if you put the women in, you should be looking at them separately?
Right.
They don't.
And it even includes, in your point, aspirin. We're all told, Dr. David Agus is here very frequently and tells us to take an aspirin every night at bed. That affects men and women differently, right?
Well, what Larry Cahill just said is, we don't know.
Yeah.
And the FDA says they are not going to go back and look at all the other drugs. They're going to go back and look at other sleeping medications, but not everything else that's on the shelf right now. And think about how much that would cost. Think about how many medications. I mean,
go ahead.
Lesley, if we metabolize Ambien differently, do we metabolize statins differently? I mean, the list could go on and on, because men and women are taking the same amount when it comes to Lipitor and other pills.
We don't know.
And we may be
taking... That's why Larry Cahill says we should look, but they're not going to.
But why wouldn't they? That's the thing. Why wouldn't they go back?
Because it's too expensive. It's ridiculous how many medications are on the market. I mean, it's not just statins, it's antidepressants, it's everything.
And men may be taking too little.
Exactly. Exactly, because they take the average, so it's big. And the differences, as I say, are everywhere. They're finding our hearts. Well, we know heart attacks are different.
Yeah.
Lungs are different. Skin is different.
Yeah, but can you imagine some kind of pressure developing for forcing the FDA to go ahead with more
Everything.
change? Yeah.
We'll just try to think about. I have no idea how many medications there are in the market, but there's a medicine for every organ and every disease. It would be.
Yeah.
You would think also that there might be a market incentive for drug companies, though, to do this, because then they could market more. This is a drug specifically for women, and this is a drug specifically for men.
From now on, from this point forward, they will insist on separate. For the FDA will insist
right.
for future drugs.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Pleasure.